I'm sorry.
That's
that was
fine.
just so really important for you all to know.
That's just like, that's just someone who we know is established in the industry coming in and talking to us. And also we do that with writers. Like, there's a writer who I really admire. Her name is Pascale Ledrell-Leck. She's very involved in the farming world also. She was the food critic at the Daily News, and we're Facebook friends. And one day, so that's another. I think probably we should talk about social media later.
We'll get that to that. But your Saveur structured trolling is a meet and greet that comes to you a lot.
Yeah.
As one big chunk of it.
Or I seek it out. Like I saw Pascale on my Facebook, and I was like, why doesn't Pascale write for us? So I asked her to come to the office. We talked, and again, we're having, I think a great way to get stories is just to have a natural conversation with someone who already has a basis in food. So you all have a basis in food, and I'm sure that I could talk to almost each and every one of you, and we'll talk about your life, we'll talk about your upbringing, we'll talk about what you're working on, and there will be something that you're doing that is of real interest.
She's just made quite an offer, don't you think?
I'm not going to talk to every single one of you.
All right, thank you. Just tell us a little bit, where does Tasting Table troll?
Yeah, the internet. So much time on the computer, but also so much time, like Gabriella said, getting out and talking to people and actually going places and trying new things and going to a farm or going to meet the cheesemaker or going and having those connections, because that, when I'm either interviewing someone on the phone or I'm talking to them in person, that is so often when it clicks, when you find that backdoor story, when you find something that, okay, that we're not just going to write a 200-word dining story, but we're going to, because everyone, what I do, there's so, like Daily Candy, Urban Daddy, Thrillist, and like everyone has so much email.
Yeah.
So we don't just want to be, okay, this restaurant opened and here's a regurgitation of the press release. That's not what we do. And
by the way, that's called subtext. So give us an example, because you're the New York editor. I mean,
right.
You're talking about a real challenge. You
Right.
don't want to just do the same old thing. How do you give us an example of you're going out and looking and finding a story?
Right. So I'm talking to a dairy farmer upstate, and he does cow's milk yogurt. And then we're just chatting, and I'm interviewing him, and I'm interested in his yogurt, and it's amazing. And they sell it at Park Slope Food Co-op, and I just picked it up when I was there, and saw it on the shelf. And then I realized he said something. Oh, and
Wait a second, I'm stopping you.
Yeah.
So back up. You were at Park Slope Co-op.
Right.
You saw something you wanted to eat.
Just in my personal life.
Right.
Like, oh, this looks cool.
Yeah.
Right. And then I called him up and I'm talking to him on the phone, and I realized that he said something about, oh, and I'm partnering with the sheep farmer down the road, and we're gonna start introducing a sheep's milk yogurt. And I'm like, oh, that, right there, that is super interesting. Or a new restaurant in New York told us. We do a lot of dining coverage, and everyone's covering it. It's a big chef. He's been on Top Chef. He's got the TV, thing going on, and people are excited. It's a new place, and it's in Brooklyn. And I don't want to just cover it and say, and it's open, and this is where it is, and this is what they're serving, and blah, blah, blah. No. So I'm talking to the chef, and I'm saying, oh, I love this sriracha sauce you're doing, which is sriracha and ranch dressing together. Totally delicious. But also other people have mentioned that. That's not, that's been out in the press release. And so I'm like, how do you make it? Do you just take the ranch dressing and then take the sriracha, bottle and put it together? And he says, no, actually I dehydrate the sriracha to make it extra kicky and extra punchy, and so there's less water, and so it's that extra thickness. And like, you dehydrate it, amazing.
So Connie's, she's very excited. But what I want you guys to realize is that she discovered the piece of this whole story at a place she goes to buy food, and she trusts that place. How many of you have ever been to Fairway and read a sign? On a cheese, right? Or gone to the farmer's market and asked a question. How many of you have ever done that, right? Okay, so the point is that where you buy your food, right, is a real connection of trust. And if you sell your food somewhere where people can trust that experience, these people might come across it as well and get excited by the possibility of something that they maybe can believe in and want to take into more. So, which takes us to Francis. So Francis, where do you guys, obviously you must get pitched a lot, partly because you had that commerce side to it, and also because you and Ruth and others have been in the field for a while and are known. But how do you go trolling? How do you go looking for topics and subjects?
Actually, to talk about this, it seems to me to make more sense to talk about it as a writer rather than as an editor, because I think my sensibility as an editor comes from being a writer, and that means, I mean, both Gabrielle and Chelsea have said something really important, right? They've talked about listening, and Clark talked about asking questions. For me as a writer, I do a variety of kinds of writing, but almost always I think of myself as first a storyteller. And to tell stories, you have to get stories. To tell stories, you have to listen to people and listen to the world around you, right? That's what I think a writer is about. It's not necessarily, I mean, unless you're a fiction writer, in which case, okay, you do your own thing. But I think it's about getting other people in their words as much as you can, because that's what really gets at the heart of them, out into the world. And for me, I think, I write about food because I love, it's like, oh, why are you a food writer? And I grew up loving food. I was in a family that really placed an importance in food. I learned to cook. I cook food because I love food, and I eat food because I love food. But I write about food because I love people, and I love to hear what people have to tell me when we start talking about food and where it goes from there. For me, food is almost always the starting point and almost never the ending point. Does that make sense? Like, I want food, because food is this thing that Clark said, it's the most important thing. And because Gabrielle said, it's love, it's politics, it's economics, it's sex, it's all these things. It's a lens, right? It's a thing. And we all know, since we're in a school, right, the first thing your writing teacher taught you in school is stories have to have tension, they have to have conflict, and they have to go somewhere, right? A thing is not a story. Food is not a story. A story is what happens around the food, what connections you're making by talking with people through food, what connections are being made by people as they cook for one another, or as I grow food for you and you don't even know about it yet. All those things, all those misconnections, it's your job to make the connections.
Would you like him to write about your food?